So Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about neuroplasticity, right? He says neurons that fire together wire together, and you have the ability to actually rewire your brain and have outcomes that are different to what you've had thus far. And there's more and more study being done on this, and I wanted to understand what your opinion is on neuroplasticity and what is the role of the divine in this process.
So when we're talking about rewiring, right, the entire structure of the brain, we're talking about everything that makes you who you are, right? And the brain is so complex, we think that the conscious thoughts that we have is who we are, when in reality, the mind is like an iceberg. Whatever's on the surface level, you're going to see something far bigger underneath that. Things that are so unconscious and so inherent and so natural that it's oftentimes beyond your awareness and beyond your ability to control. All of the conscious thoughts are actually emanations of an unconscious reality behind it all. So this rewiring, it's a great idea in theory. Right? We know that that's how the brain forms these connections. We know that's real. We know neuroplasticity is, possible. But in terms of the actual application of any of these techniques, like a lot of transformational leaders talk about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. When you actually look at the data and the capabilities of NLP, it's very minimal. It uses an extreme amount of effort, huge amount of time, very minimal, if not negligible outcome. Because this is something that requires so much effort to change. We're talking about something that if you ever try and stop a habit, if you're ever trying to learn something, and let's say you're much older, right? They say it's harder to teach an old dog new tricks. That's because of that, right, neuroplasticity that's already been ingrained, right? Neuroplasticity can change, but the amount of effort and time it takes is so significant. It's hard to make any huge changes there.
Yeah.
Now, what this divine energy does, and we've seen this in our clinical trials, is that if we apply this divine energy, this divine blessing, and we're looking at changes in neuroplasticity, the significant factors that point to increases in this changing of the rewiring of the brain, we're looking at things like cognitive function improving. We're looking at motor function changing. We're looking at people's perceptions altering. We're looking at people, finding relief from anxiety, depression, stress, right? These vital aspects that, are very much ingrained by the brain's neural wiring. When we see these changes, when we see people's perceptions, their outlooks on life, their moods, all of those things, this clarity, this ability to focus, there's no science that can, declare that this is, a true outcome, a true solution to mental restlessness. So in these clinical trials, we see that the participants are experiencing mental clarity. They're experiencing heightened cognitive function, like greater motor agility, right? They're experiencing such significant improvements that suggest that this divine power is the real answer to improvements in neuroplasticity and the ability for the brain to rewire itself. When this blessing happens, you naturally gain the ability where the brain is capable of rewiring itself with ease, and oftentimes it happens automatically. This divine energy takes care of that. You don't need to make a significant effort to have a positive outlook. The positive outlook just happens when your consciousness changes.
Yeah. And does this have the ripple effect, so to speak, on one's mental health condition? Because especially today, right, like mental health is so heavily discussed because it's an illness that just because you can't see doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And people are battling anxiety, depression. You've been through that yourself in your journey. Have you seen it reverse? And again, is it a combination of neuroplasticity along with this aspect of the divine blessing? How does it function? How does it work?
I mean, it's really hard to say how it works. All we could really say is that
it does
work,
yeah,
right? And we're able to measure the outcome. And with these clinical trials, what we're measuring things like neurotransmitters, we're measuring hormones, we're measuring even things as much as nutrient absorption. All of these things are reflections of the capabilities of the mind to work better in order, right? There's a mind-body connection, right? And so when the mind is working better, when your cognition is functioning at its optimal level, you see even changes down in your body and your health and your inflammation, your stress, your ability to absorb nutrients, right, from food. So we're measuring measuring all these different parameters in these clinical trials, as well as we're using something called the NIH Toolbox. It's from the U.S. National Institutes of Health, and it's been implemented since 2012 because it's seen as the gold standard for measuring cognitive and motor function, removing all the subjective data, looking at all the objective data in order to actually determine, is there an impact from the treatment on someone's cognition and on our motor function.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about cognition and motor function, some of the tests that they include in this NIH toolbox are things that are like dexterity for motor function, we're like grip strength, locomotion, balance, endurance, right, things of that nature. When we're talking about cognitive function, we're talking about things like executive functioning, right, critical thinking. We're talking about problem solving. We're talking about episodic memory, working memory, long-term memory, short-term memory, all these different parameters. And these are randomized tests, so there's no way to manipulate or change them in any way, and they're all stored in a server with the National Institutes of Health in the United States. So even the investigators have no ability to predict the exact way the question will appear, when the question will come up. It's completely randomized. And with all of our clinical trials, we're having placebo groups. So we're ruling out any psychological influence. Where majority of our clinical trials have been double-blinded. So meaning that if I'm sitting right in one location and I'm delivering the blessing to the group, I don't know who I'm blessing. I don't know anything about them. I don't know their name. I don't know their problem. I don't even know exactly where they're located. I know nothing about them. All I know is I'm blessing a group of people located in India. Meanwhile, I'm located in the United States. We're talking remote energy healing, blessing at a distance. And on top of that, the recipients, they don't know if they're getting a treatment. And we have a sham healer, right, who is pretending to deliver blessing without actually delivering, to remove any possibility of that psychological impact. So we're comparing this blessing group with a psychological group, a placebo control, as well as a normal control who's not receiving any treatment whatsoever.
Right.
So this is all by comparison to that. And on top of that, when we see this blessing group, even the investigators, they're double-blinded as well. So they have no idea which group is receiving the blessing, which is the control. Everybody's randomized. Nobody knows who's who.
Right.
Right? Everybody has a number and it's randomized. And so when we're getting the results from this cognitive motor function, I just want to give you an idea on how significant this is, because this is the first. We are the first to show improvements in the cognitive and motor function aspects of the NIH toolbox. There is no other test or clinical trial that has been able to show improvements in cognitive and motor function using the NIH toolbox. We are the first.